They used to laugh behind my back, some didn't even bother hiding it. "Oh, that's just the older brother, the one who never figured life out," they'd say. Meanwhile, my younger brother, Ivy League grad, company golden boy, mom and dad's walking trophy. And me? The screw-up. The burden. At every family gathering, every holiday dinner, I was just tolerated. But here's the truth no one saw coming: while they turned their noses up at me, I was living a life none of them could have imagined. I played the part of the quiet disappointment so well, they never asked questions. They never wanted the answers. Then came the engagement dinner. My brother beaming, his fiancée glowing, until she stood up, raised her glass, and cracked my entire double life wide open. I didn't plan for that moment. I'd spent years hiding in plain sight. And it all unraveled with one speech, from the one person I never expected to see through me. You think you know who the failure in the family is? So did they. Until the truth slapped them across the face, and there was no going back. And there was no going back. The room, once buzzing with celebratory chatter, fell deathly silent. The clinking of silverware against china, the murmur of polite conversation, the forced laughter at my father's tired jokes, all vanished. Swallowed whole by the gaping maw of revelation. My brother's fiancée, Sarah, stood there, her hand still raised, a strange, almost predatory glint in her eyes. She'd just dropped a bomb into the heart of my family, and she seemed to relish the ensuing carnage. "You all think you know David," she'd said, her voice clear and strong, cutting through the celebratory haze like a diamond through glass. The quiet one. The underachiever. She'd paused then, letting the word hang in the air, thick with unspoken judgment. Judgment I'd grown accustomed to, a familiar weight on my shoulders. But this time, it was different. This time, it was laced with something else. Something, knowing. "But David," she continued, her gaze locking onto mine, a shiver running down my spine, "has been living a life far more extraordinary than any of us could imagine." My heart hammered against my ribs. The blood roared in my ears. I could feel the weight of all their eyes on me, burning into my skin. My carefully constructed facade, the mask of mediocrity I'd worn for so long, began to crumble. Sarah went on to detail, with chilling accuracy, aspects of my life I'd sworn to secrecy. She spoke of my travels, my work, my associations. Things I'd kept hidden from my family, tucked away in the shadows, safe from their prying eyes and their inevitable disapproval. She painted a picture of a man they didn't recognize. A man who wasn't a failure, but something else. The initial shock gave way to a cacophony of confused murmurs. My mother gasped, her hand fluttering to her chest. My father's face hardened, his eyes narrowed, suspicion clouding his features. My brother, poor bewildered Daniel, looked from Sarah to me, his expression a mixture of disbelief and hurt. He'd always been so proud of his carefully curated life, his predictable trajectory. And now, here I was, his shadow, his supposed failure, suddenly cast in a light he couldn't comprehend. I wanted to disappear. To melt into the floorboards, to become invisible. But I couldn't move. I was frozen, trapped in the spotlight, the subject of their bewildered scrutiny. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with unspoken questions. Why? How? Who is this man? The rest of the evening passed in a blur. The celebratory atmosphere was shattered, replaced by an unsettling tension. Whispers followed me like shadows. Curious glances darted my way. I felt like an exhibit in a museum, a strange and exotic creature put on display for their amusement. I managed to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the dinner, pleading a sudden headache. The drive home was a blur of flashing streetlights and racing thoughts. How did Sarah know? What was her game? I'd met her only a handful of times, always in the presence of my family. We'd exchanged pleasantries, nothing more. There was no way she could have known the truth. Unless... A chilling thought crept into my mind. Unless someone had told her. Someone who knew my secrets. Someone I trusted. I parked the car in the garage of my modest suburban home, a stark contrast to the life Sarah had just exposed. The house felt empty, hollow. I walked through the silent rooms, the weight of their judgment pressing down on me. I poured myself a drink, the amber liquid sloshing in the glass, a reflection of the turmoil within me. I sat by the window, staring out at the quiet street, the mundane normalcy of it all a stark contrast to the chaos that had just erupted in my life. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, transforming familiar objects into something sinister, unsettling. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. This was just the beginning. Sarah's revelation had opened a Pandora's box, and I knew, with a sickening certainty, that things were about to get much, much worse. The ringing of the phone startled me. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the receiver. Who could be calling at this hour? I picked up, my voice raspy. Hello. A distorted voice on the other end sent a chill down my spine. You should have stayed quiet, David. You should have kept playing your part. The line went dead. I stood there, the phone clutched in my hand, my heart pounding in my chest. The quiet suburban street outside my window suddenly felt menacing, the shadows deeper, more ominous. I was no longer hiding in plain sight. I was exposed. And someone, somewhere, was not happy about it. The cryptic threat hung in the air, heavier than the silence that followed. My hand trembled, the cheap plastic of the phone receiver slick against my palm. You should have stayed quiet. The words echoed in my mind, a sinister lullaby. Who was this? And what part was I supposed to be playing? The dutiful, underachieving son? The invisible man? Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside my window, sounded like an approaching footstep. I spent the rest of the night in the living room, the lights blazing, a futile attempt to ward off the encroaching darkness. The shadows seemed to mock me, twisting and shifting, playing tricks on my exhausted mind. Dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of gray and orange, but it brought no comfort. The threat lingered, a dark cloud hanging over me. I needed answers. And I knew where to start. Sarah. I drove to her apartment, a sleek, modern building in the upscale part of town, a world away from my modest suburban existence. My hands were clammy on the steering wheel, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had to confront her. I had to understand why she'd done this. She answered the door, her eyes widening slightly in surprise, but quickly replaced with a cool, almost detached composure. David, she said, her voice smooth, unruffled. What a surprise. Why, Sarah? The words tumbled out, raw and ragged. Why did you do it? She stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. The apartment was immaculate, minimalist, everything in its place. Just like her life, I thought bitterly. So perfectly arranged. So meticulously controlled. I did what I had to do, she said, her voice calm, almost soothing. For Daniel. For your family. For my family. I scoffed. You've torn my family apart. You've exposed secrets that were better left buried. A flicker of something, annoyance, impatience, crossed her face. Don't be dramatic, David. They deserve to know the truth. The truth? I repeated, my voice rising. What truth? The truth according to who? You. She sighed, a long, drawn-out sound that grated on my nerves. David, she said, her voice taking on a condescending tone. You've been living a lie. A dangerous lie. And it was only a matter of time before it caught up with you. Dangerous? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. My life is my business. It doesn't concern you, or my family. It concerns Daniel, she said, her voice hardening. He's about to marry into a family with complications. He deserves to know what he's getting himself into. Complications. I felt a surge of anger. Is that what you call it? My life? My work? Your work with them, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. The Salazars. They're not exactly known for their ethical business practices. My blood ran cold. The Salazars. How did she know about them? My association with them was supposed to be a closely guarded secret. Only a handful of people knew about it. Who told you about the Salazars? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She smiled, a thin, cruel smile that sent a shiver down my spine. Does it matter? She asked. The point is, I know. And now, so does your family. I stared at her, my mind racing. Someone had betrayed me. Someone I trusted. But who? And why? You're playing a dangerous game, Sarah, I said, my voice low and menacing. A game you might not win. She laughed, a light, airy sound that seemed to mock my threat. I'm not playing any games, David, she said. I'm simply protecting the man I love. I knew then that there was no reasoning with her. She was convinced that she was doing the right thing, that she was protecting her fiancé, my brother, from the supposed dangers of my life. But she had no idea the kind of storm she had unleashed. I left her apartment, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and anger. I needed to find out who had betrayed me. And I needed to do it fast. Because whoever they were, they had just made me a target. The distorted voice on the phone echoed in my mind. You should have stayed quiet. I had been quiet. I had played my part. But now, the game had changed. And I was no longer willing to be a pawn. I drove home, the familiar streets of my suburban neighborhood seeming alien and threatening. The world I had carefully constructed, the life I had so meticulously hidden, was crumbling around me. And I had a feeling that the worst was yet to come. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed a black car parked across the street. It was nondescript, unremarkable, but something about it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I watched it in my rearview mirror as I parked, my hand hovering over the ignition. The car remained stationary, its windows tinted, obscuring the occupants within. I sat there for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest, a sense of unease settling over me. Was it just a coincidence? Or was I being watched? I decided to take a chance. I got out of the car, locking it behind me, my eyes fixed on the black car across the street. As I walked towards my front door, the car's engine started. It pulled away from the curb, slowly, deliberately, as if to make sure I saw it. I watched it disappear down the street, my mind racing. They were watching me. They knew. And they were sending a message. The game had officially begun. The black car's silent departure was more unsettling than any overt threat. It confirmed my suspicions, solidified the creeping dread that had taken root in my gut. I was being watched, manipulated, and Sarah's theatrical reveal at the dinner was just the opening act. Inside, the house felt colder than usual, the silence amplified, pressing in on me. I checked the locks, a pointless ritual, knowing that if they wanted to get in, they would. I poured myself another drink, the alcohol a temporary balm against the gnawing anxiety. I needed to think, to strategize. Who knew about my connection to the Salazars? The list was short, thankfully. Very short. There was Marcus, my liaison, the man who'd initially brought me into the fold. And then there was Daniel. My own brother. He was the only other person who knew the full extent of my involvement. He'd helped me a few times, running errands, delivering packages. Nothing illegal, I'd assured him. Just sensitive information. He'd trusted me. He'd always trusted me. Could he have betrayed me? The thought was a bitter pill to swallow. I paced the floor, the hardwood creaking under my weight, the rhythmic sound a counterpoint to the chaotic thoughts swirling in my head. It had to be Daniel. It made a twisted kind of sense. He was the only one who could have given Sarah such detailed information. But why? Why would he betray me like this? What possible motive could he have? The answer hit me with the force of a physical blow. Jealousy. Resentment. He'd always lived in my shadow, the golden boy, the successful one, while I was the quiet underachiever. He'd probably resented the secret life I'd led, the risks I'd taken, the rewards I'd reaped. He'd wanted to expose me, to bring me down to his level. I felt a surge of anger, hot and burning. How could he? After everything we'd been through, after all the years we'd spent together, how could he betray me like this? I had to confront him. I had to hear it from his own lips. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, the anger fueling my movements. The drive to Daniel's house was a blur of red lights and angry thoughts. I parked the car, barely registering the familiar surroundings. I marched up to the front door, my hand trembling as I rang the doorbell. Daniel opened the door, his face pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and guilt. I knew then, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I'd been right. He was the one. David, he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. I can explain. Explain. I repeated, my voice cold, hard. Explain how you could betray me like this. How you could feed Sarah all those lies. He flinched at the word lies, but didn't deny it. He stepped aside, allowing me to enter. The house was immaculate, just like Sarah's apartment. Everything in its place. A perfect facade. He followed me into the living room, his movements hesitant, his gaze averted. He looked like a child caught stealing cookies. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said, his voice trembling. I wanted to protect Sarah. I wanted her to know what she was getting into. Protect her. I scoffed. By destroying my life. By exposing me to the Salazars. He looked up then, his eyes filled with a desperate plea. I didn't tell her about the Salazars, he said. I swear. I only told her about the other things. The travels, the work. I never mentioned the Salazars. I stared at him, my mind reeling. If he hadn't told Sarah about the Salazars, then who had? And why? Suddenly, a memory flashed through my mind. A conversation with Marcus, weeks ago, in a crowded bar. He'd been talking about expanding the business, bringing in new people. He'd mentioned someone named Sarah. He'd said she was ambitious, ruthless, and had connections. He'd said she was exactly what they needed. It all clicked into place. Sarah hadn't been protecting Daniel. She'd been playing us both. She'd been working with the Salazars all along. She'd used Daniel to get to me, to expose me, to make me vulnerable. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I'd been so focused on Daniel, on my family, that I'd been blind to the real threat. Sarah. She was the one who had betrayed me. She was the one who had set me up. I looked at Daniel, his face etched with worry and confusion. He was a pawn in her game, just like me. He hadn't betrayed me. He'd been manipulated, just like I had. It wasn't Daniel, I said, my voice hoarse. It was Sarah. She's working with the Salazars. Daniel stared at me, his eyes widening in disbelief. Sarah, he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. But why? I don't know, I said. But I'm going to find out. I left Daniel's house, my mind racing. I had to find Sarah. I had to confront her. I had to understand why she'd done this. I drove to her apartment, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. I parked the car and walked towards the building, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to end this. I had to expose her. I reached her apartment and rang the doorbell. There was no answer. I rang again, my hand trembling. Still no answer. I tried the door handle. It was unlocked. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The apartment was empty. She was gone. I walked through the silent rooms, a sense of unease settling over me. She'd known I was coming. She'd been expecting me. I noticed a small, rectangular object on the coffee table. It was a phone. My phone. The one I'd lost weeks ago. The one I'd used to communicate with Marcus, with the Salazars. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling. There was a single message waiting for me. It was from Sarah. You should have stayed quiet, David, the message said. You should have kept playing your part. Now, you'll pay the price. I closed my eyes, the weight of her betrayal crushing me. I'd been a fool. I'd been so blinded by my own secrets, by my own desire to protect my family, that I'd walked right into her trap. I left the apartment, my mind numb. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. My life, as I knew it, was over. I walked out into the night, the city lights blurring around me. I was alone. Exposed. And hunted. But I wouldn't give up. I would fight back. I would find a way to survive. I would find a way to expose Sarah and the Salazars. I would find a way to clear my name. I had nothing left to lose. The city lights blurred, a dizzying kaleidoscope of color and movement. I walked, not knowing where I was going, just needing to put distance between myself and Sarah's empty apartment, and the echoing emptiness of my own life. Each step was heavy, weighted down by the betrayal, the lies, the crushing realization that everything I'd built, everything I'd thought I knew, was a carefully constructed illusion. Sarah. The name tasted like ash in my mouth. I'd underestimated her, blinded by my own assumptions, my own guilt. I'd focused on Daniel, on my family, convinced that the threat came from within, when all along, it had been lurking on the periphery, disguised as love, as concern. The Salazars. They were a force I'd always respected, even feared. But I'd never imagined they'd come after me like this. Through Sarah. Through my own brother's fiancée. It was a masterstroke of manipulation, a cruel twist of the knife. But I wouldn't break. I wouldn't let them win. I'd spent years building a life in the shadows, navigating a world of secrets and lies. I'd learned to adapt, to survive. And I would use those skills now, to fight back, to expose them, to reclaim my life. This was far from over. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, a darker, more dangerous chapter. But I was ready. I had nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. If you're captivated by stories of betrayal, hidden lives, and the fight for survival, then this channel is for you. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter in this unfolding saga. Like this video if you want to hear more stories like this one, stories that explore the dark underbelly of seemingly ordinary lives, stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The truth is out there, waiting to be uncovered. And together, we will unravel its mysteries.